Hello everybody, I'm back again with some card reveals for you to talk about, digest, analyse a little bit. I've been watching the Open this weekend and there were a bunch of new cards revealed. I'm in fact making this while it is going on. I will go and catch up, the rest of the games after I'm done here. And I'm sure there'll be more cards, maybe even announced, after I've recorded this video. So, with that being said, if there are more things that come out, maybe even leaders or something, I'll be sure to talk about them as well. But for now, I'm just gonna, briefly, surmise the new cards that we've been shown by the players at the Open and by CDPR at that event. There's a lot of exciting stuff. There's also a couple of card reveals, maybe from creators. Although I'm not going to link to any as I don't have the links on hand, unfortunately. I've been a little bit out of the loop in terms of the card reveals for a couple of days. But anyway, let's just jump right into it. And I'm going to have to tell you provision costs, as always, if I can remember them off the top of my head. So, the first card that has been revealed is Rune. This is a Northern Realms special card. I think it's 4 provisions, and it gives an allied unit a shield and vitality for 4 turns. So, effectively, a bit of a protective spell. I hear this is a pretty, well-known spell in Witcher lore. Maybe that's not true, but either way, seems like a pretty cool card. It definitely has some synergy with Tridem Infantry, of course. Boosting them every turn can get you a lot of value and damage. Being done to the opponents, of course. The shield is not going to be so good, I don't think. We've talked about this before, but if you have a sort of deploy or instant shield-giving effect, it's typically not going to be as good as the sort of delayed, player unit that will then give shield on order. You want to give your, engine or your very powerful card shield the turn it is played, not the turn after, which is what Rune will end up doing. So, don't see the shield aspect being that important. The vitality with Tridem Infantry, though, could be quite good. Worth noting that Purify is really going to wreck this card. If you have any kind of Purify effect, then you're really going to deal with Rune very well, because you're going to clear both the shield and the vitality from the unit that gets buffed by this. So a little bit vulnerable. If Purify is, a common thing in the meta, then Rune probably won't be a very powerful card. But there's some synergy there in the faction. A little bit more shield support. You can maybe play this with the Windhelm, who's down here somewhere. I don't even know where he is. I may have missed him. Yeah, there he is. He does get, boosts whenever he has a shield, so that's potentially a little bit of synergy with that guy as well, and maybe even more Northern Realms cards which have shield synergy. Of course, King Rogner, you can always get those shields on your board and then use him to pay off on those. So there's potential that this card will be okay. For 4 provisions, it's not too much of a commitment. Maybe you just throw it in your deck, because why not? 4 provision card, easy peasy. But I imagine it'll be kind of vulnerable to Purify if that is a commonplace mechanic, which I expect it might be, reasonably popular. So I'm not sure this will be too strong, but we'll see about that. Next one is another vitality giving card. This is Dryad's Caress, another 4 provision card, but for Scoia'tael it's a special, and you give an allied unit vitality for 6 turns, and if you control a Dryad you get to purify the unit first. So kind of, I guess, the faction specific take on vitality, bleeding. You have things like, Feast of Blood as well for monsters. There might even be more for the other factions, who knows. These kind of new statuses being woven into special cards for each faction is pretty cool. Each with their own unique take, Northern Realms Shield, Monsters Bleeding, Scoia'tael Purify, and Vitality and whatnot. So, will this be good? Well, again, it's kind of going to come down to, whether or not Vitality, Bleeding, all those status effects are good, how much Purify is being played. But this one's not terrible. Definitely getting that Purify on your own unit could be nice. It's a very effective counter to Bleeding. This card, if you have a Dryad on the board, you deny Bleeding and then get potential of 6 points after that for 4 provisions. In theory, can be really good. Problem with Vitality in general, I suppose, is that you're able to remove the unit that's been given Vitality. If you remove the unit, you remove the Vitality points effectively before they even get to go off. And Vitality plays into tool removals, so the longer it kind of is proccing, the more susceptible you are to things like Peter and spores and whatever, Geralt, etc. So I'm not sure what to say about this. I imagine these 4 provision Vitality Bleeding type cards won't be played, but maybe there'll be some decks that can really use them nicely. Not sure I see it, but You never know. Of course, you could play Farseers and have special card synergy going on maybe in your deck. I'm not sure I see it, but this is a pretty cool effect. It has Purify on it as well, which is nice. Worth noting with Northern Realms as well, the Rune word, of course, gives shield, which does help, you know, to keep the unit with Vitality alive and get the value from Vitality. So you don't have to play into tool removal with it, as likely. Maybe you give this to a 1-strength unit or something, and it'll not die immediately because of the shield, get some Vitality points. That's worth keeping in mind, but I don't know what to say about these cards. They probably won't be, you know, too popular, I don't imagine, but could be wrong about that. Next up we have Tawny Joust. This is a 4-provision card again, special for Nilfgaard, and it's a tactic card, which is relevant because you can put it in your Ardil deck if you're wanting to get more value from him. And you can choose to either remove an enemy unit's shield, well, you do that, and then you can choose to damage the unit by 3 or give an allied unit a shield and boost it by 3. So it's kind of some shield counterplay. If shield Northern Realms is ever very powerful, you can always knock their shields off and get a bit of extra value in damage or boost, and a shield for your own guy potentially. You don't need to actually, you know, remove the shield to get this value, so that means you can get basically 3 points and a shield for 4 provisions, and it's a tactic. Will that be good? Maybe, just because of the tactic tag. You can put that in Ardil, it's kind of a nice fodder for your deck. If shields are popular, which, you know, they might be, with Watchman being a card for neutral, and Northern Realms having a lot of shield synergy, you know, if shields are good, this could see quite a bit of play, I imagine, just because you get to remove a shield and you double dip. You take their shield, you get your own shield, and you get a boost or damage, potentially. So could be quite good as a tactic. I think if it wasn't a tactic, it probably wouldn't be played, but I do see this having a spot in Ardil decks potentially in the future, which is pretty exciting, for sure. Next up we have Moondust. This is a neutral 5-provision special, which purifies a unit and damages it by 4. So we were talking about, you know, purification and ways to maybe deal with things like Rune Word, the Dryad's Caress and whatnot. This will definitely deal with Rune Word, and it's also like a direct counter to that Windtown that we were talking about as well. If you slam him, he's 7 provisions, going to come down at 4 strength effectively after being boosted by his ability, and you can just purify this and deal 4 damage to it with the Moondust if you're running that card. So nice 5 for 7 trade there. Means, you know, in theory, if Windtown deck is ever like super good, then you can just play Moondust as a counter. I think this might be a decent tech card just to throw in against, you know, potential Vitality, shields, and, you know, maybe a few other things that you might see. You can also, I guess, kill a doomed unit with this. You purify the doomed status from it, kill the unit, and then you can maybe blue dream it or something. It's worth keeping in mind if there are any powerful doomed units that, you know, are 4 strength maybe in the future. Apart from that, seems like an okay special card. You might put this in a Skellige deck maybe, just for a nice discard potential with Coral, or pretty good value, 4 points. You know, or just filler in your deck. It can probably get more than the 4 or 5 value that you want from that 5-provision card. A fair amount of the time, I want to say. So it seems okay. Next we have Thor. This is a 5-provision card, I do believe, and it clears all row effects from your side and boosts an allied unit by 4. And if you actually clear any rows, you decrease that boost by 2 for every, you know, row cleared. So it works kind of like old First Light in that you can clear weather effects, and if you are using that kind of tech ability, you're going to get a bit less value on the boost because you're getting the value in the weather removal. So I really like that design. Firstly, I think that was something that made weather really nice and interactive and actually viable, but also not oppressive in previous versions of Gwent. You know, being able to remove weather but not completely destroy your opponent because you get less points from the removal. It's a really nice way to have that kind of interaction going on. Not like with artifacts and artifact removal right now where it's all or nothing. This kind of middle ground where it's something better or something slightly worse, depending on whether you can you know, get the tech value or not. So that's nice to see that they're taking that direction with weather and weather removal. Yeah, as artifacts kind of doing the opposite thing, unfortunately. Either way, pretty cool card. I imagine that might see play if Dragon's Dream is still popular, if there are weather effects that are popular. And maybe there are. There are actually, I think there's one card here which is weather related, so we'll get into that in a second. But Thor, pretty okay, neutral, and another tech option to deal with weather. Sure, why not? Next up we have Sandstorm. This is a I think it's 5 provisions. I might be wrong about that, but I think it's a 5. And it is a special card which damages a unit at both ends of an enemy row by 3. So a bit of well-costed, easy removal that can in theory be played around to an extent. If it is 5 provisions, I think I'm remembering correctly that it is. It's the only card I can't really remember for sure, but I think that's right. If it's a 5 for 6, that's pretty okay. Maybe you throw that in a deck or two just to get some stable value, although it seems in general the sort of minimum value a 4 provision card is getting has been raised a little bit to maybe 6. So I'd be surprised if 5 provision cards for 6 are going to be that popular, if there are a lot of really good 4 provision cards that you could play instead. We'll see. Bit of a neutral option if you want to just throw a bit of damage in. Being able to remove 2 engines with this, it counters things like Neckers quite nicely, or a couple of Thrive units in monsters or whatever, Harmony units in Squirtle I suppose. Not sure it'll be super popular, but it's another option for people to play around with. So what do we have next? We have the Garcane, which is a 4 provision card for, of course, monsters 2 strength, and with the deploy of damage a bleeding enemy unit by the amount of bleeding it has. So you want to hit at least kind of a 2, 3, 4 bleeding target. I think I saw this being 4 strength when I first saw it on stream, but I guess they changed it, or that was a mishap or whatever. Either way, if it was at 4 strength for 4 provisions, it'd be quite strong, I think. As a 2 for 4, okay, you need bleeding units for it to be valuable. It's a bit conditional. It might be dead in round 3. It might be dead if they have answers to your bleeding. So I'm not sure I'm going to see this being very good. But maybe, if you're packing a ton of bleeding in your deck, things like the Plumards and whatnot, maybe some of the other vampires or whatever that give bleeding, if there are those. Yeah, the Flader does that or whatever. Oh wait, that's Vitality, never mind. Maybe there's more. I can't remember. But there are, the Feast of Blood, for example, is one, right? Bleeding effect. I don't know. I'm not sure I see like a bleeding archetype be good, but, maybe there are more cards that will support that. And potentially, as, we said, it could be the case that Purify isn't a very strong mechanic. It's always possible. I think it will be quite prevalent, potentially, but it's going to be kind of a back and forth, right? If Bleeding and Vitality are good, then Purification will be good. And if Purification's good, those get worse, and then Purification gets worse. So it's kind of, the meta's going to kind of cycle a bit with those types of statuses and removal of statuses. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, what can we say about Garcane? Basically, I think this is a bit too conditional to be working at 2 strength for 4. Maybe with Plumards, you can in theory get quite a bit of value there. If the Plumard, bleeding goes off for 4 turns and then you hit for 6 with this, just not sure I see that happening reliably. And the problem with this is also, if you're hitting a unit, if you're damaging a unit that's already bleeding, you're kind of taking away value from the bleed effect, right? If you have like a 6 strength unit with 6 strength with 6 turns of bleeding on it, and you damage it by 6, you get rid of your bleeding value. So it seems like there's a bit of anti-synergy going on with that card, and I really don't think this one will be good in any capacity, but yeah, it's just my take on it. Next up, we have the Centurion Envoy. This is a 5 provision, 2 strength Northern Realms card with Formation, which of course gives Zeal if you play it on the melee row, and +1 boost if you play it on the ranged row. Has an order effect of give 2 charges to an allied unit. So a little bit of support for stuff like Demavand, the sort of machine archetype for Northern Realms, and potentially other cards like Naneke, Synthesis, Merc de Bracket, and those kind of dragons and whatnot that you might play in Northern Realms that are commonly played in things like Demavand and Meve and other decks and whatnot. So pretty cool card. I like the Formation tag very much. It's going to allow these engines to get a bit more value where they normally otherwise wouldn't, potentially. And yeah, I think this one might be played. I don't know. I think at the moment Demavand and these sort of charge decks aren't particularly great, so I'm not sure that this card will really support that enough, but we'll see. We'll see. Definitely a fan of the Formation tag, and this could be quite good. I mean, even with like Kedwenny Sergeant, that could be quite a powerful combo. You play the Sergeant with the Tridam, the Sergeant buffs twice, and then they're not going to remove a Sergeant, that's already used its charges most of the time. You can maybe give it charges again and reuse that. Could be a combo that works. I don't know. This might actually be quite good, to be honest with you, in some kind of Meve boost deck related type thing. We'll have to wait and see though on that one. Up next is the Broccolon Sentinel. It's a 2 strength, 5 provision, Scoia'tael bronze card, and it deploys damage an enemy unit by 2, and if you destroy a unit with that damage, you're able to summon the other copy of the Broccolon Sentinel, from your deck to that row. So a little bit of another thinning tool for Scoia'tael. At this point, we're getting quite a bit of thinning for Scoia'tael, right? And for other factions, you can play Volunteers and these Sentinel guys and Witches and Roach if you wanted to, and get kind of a hyper thinning vibe going. It seems quite fairly costed at 5 provisions. You're getting effectively, 6 points for your play, if you will, for 10 provisions. 4-point costed thinning is pretty damn good. So if you're reliably able to get this off, I imagine this card will be quite competitive, quite viable. Another option, maybe with Volunteers, maybe will, be indicating that Witches aren't going to be that prevalent, actually. That might be false. Maybe you'll just play hyper thinning decks, but if you're able to play these and Volunteers, potentially you don't want to play Witches as well. It's already quite a lot of thinning there. It's worth keeping in mind. Pretty nicely costed thinning unit, utilising the Death Blow mechanic, which is cool. Alright, I think we're getting towards the end of the cards here. We do have a few more, actually. Next is Curse of Corruption. This is an artifact, I do believe. Is that true? No, I think it's a special. I think it is a special. I hope it's a special, whatever. It is a 9 provisions, it is a neutral, and it just destroys the highest units. It's like a Scorch without being able to stack multiple units, kill multiple stuff at the same time. Seems pretty fair enough. Kind of like, is it Glorious Hunt, which destroys the highest base power unit, I think? So this is a pretty, another nice tool to deal with big targets such as Spear Tip, or big boosts. Even the Philevandrel deck that More Legion played this weekend, which is getting popular, gets some pretty big units. You could maybe use this against that, or decks similar to that, to really deal with them. Pretty nice to have that other option in terms of specials. A little bit of a buff to Francesca, potentially. If she wants to play this, it gives her another option to reuse with her, spell, of course, with her leader ability. Seems not too bad. Alright, next up we have... Sorry, I'm going to take a drink. Let's go. Lots of talking. Lots of cards to talk about. Wow. So, next up we have Scepter of Storms. This one is an 8 provision card, and it is an artifact. It has Zeal and an order effect of Spawn and play a Biting Frost, Impenetrable Fog, or Torrential Rain. So, kind of like old Vader Maker, you get to pick your favourite of the weather options, play one of them, and it's fairly costed at 8 for 8. You maybe sacrifice that kind of point, that provision point, where the normal weather would cost 7, right? Instead, costs 8, but you get a bit more flexibility in what you can choose for the weather, and you maybe get to double up on different kinds of weather if you want, to play like a lot of weather in a deck. Also an artifact synergy. Worth noting, this can be destroyed by the Vivian Oriole, which talked about before. Will it be good? I don't see it still, but more artifacts are coming out. Maybe there are even more that will be playable. And this one's a pretty high provision artifact, 8 provisions, so if a lot of people are deciding to go for weather, then Vivienne becomes, potentially a way to deal with that stuff. You don't have to spawn the weather straight away, so maybe this will see play in full artifact decks. I could see that. You kind of just delay with your Scepter of Storm, you play it and your Thunderbolt potions and your whatever else, and then, you kill their couple of units with your fog that you spawn from this, etc. You can hold on to the weather, so that's worth keeping in mind. Might be good potentially with things like greatswords and dagger as well, right? Because you can get like all the value from the weather, as in you can play the greatsword the same turn that you use the weather if you hold on to the charge of this, if you don't use the zeal. So that's also worth keeping in mind. Your greatswords won't be as vulnerable to removal. Play Torrential Rain, it will go up to 5 strength or whatever, and maybe survive the damage that the opponent has. Maybe greatswords could be getting enough support to be viable, who knows. Alright, I think we have one last card for today, and that is Rodic of Duntine. Nilfgaard cards, 7 provisions, 2 strength and a spying unit, so we'll go on the opponent's side of the board, of course. Give them 2 strength, and you deploy, look at 2 random gold cards from your deck, and play one of them. So, working kind of like a Velem, which is also which is a 6 provision card actually, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay, guys, chill out. I think he is 6 provisions. I'm almost certain he's 6 provisions. So a little bit more expensive, but you do get kind of that flexibility in you can choose one or other of the, you know, the gold cards that you get shown. A little bit more flexible and kind of another sort of card to work with Enforcer, Imperial Enforcer, which did get nerfed in a recent patch, unfortunately, and isn't seeing much play at the moment. Will it make Enforcer good? I highly doubt it. Just because that card is kind of bad, even if it works out. It's a bit too vulnerable to removal and whatnot. But, you know, this is definitely an option if you're going to play Willem in your Nilfgaard decks, which I know some people do. Then maybe you consider just putting Rodic in, since you get a bit more flexibility. Yes, at the cost of maybe a provision, but that might be worth it. Alternatively, you can maybe throw a lot of thinning together and do some kind of crazy thinning deck madness at the cost of, you know, points on your opponent's side of the board. Play things like Roderick, play things like Willem, play things like Witchers and Imperial Brigade and whatnot. You can maybe make a hyper thin Nilfgaard deck. So there's definitely some more thinning tools being revealed now, which I think is a good thing. It might hopefully mean that Witchers aren't so prevalent. We'll see if that is the case. It might mean that thinning is just everywhere and we're back to the old Gwent ways of thinning a lot. It might mean neither of those things. You know, these cards might just not be too playable, depending on how the meta pans out. Of course, you can use this with things like Lacerate to kind of, or Dragon's Dream or whatever, to get the value from the thinning and the gold card that you get, and also delete the points that will, you know, come from the spying tag. So, pretty interesting one, and kind of harkening back to the old ways of Nilfgaard, the old emissaries where they used to thin your deck out. It is a gold card, so you can't double up on this guy, but I'm sure that's fine. We don't want too much thinning to make the game too consistent, otherwise, you know, people will complain about it being boring and whatnot. So, seems good. Nothing to complain about with these cards. They all seem pretty cool. Of course, we got some ones before as well, which I talked about. If you haven't seen that, go check out the playlist on the YouTube channel where I talk about all the Crimson Curse cards. I will be talking about any more that are released today, tomorrow, the next day, all the way up until the expansion releases, of course. And I'll probably do a top 5, top 10, whatever, Crimson Curse cards. In my opinion, we'll probably see play later down the line as well. Anyway, I'll be, of course, trying to get more content out for you guys regularly on this channel. So do hit subscribe if you want to see more of that. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I do appreciate it, and I will see you next time.